so people will be able to see it later.
Okay.
So we're just going to begin. And I'm Samantha Hoffman, and I am Vice President of the Chicago Writers Association and Director of Let's Just Write, an Uncommon Writers Conference. And I want to thank you all for joining us today and for weathering the technical difficulties. And if you haven't tuned in before, this is a series where we chat with people who have presented at our previous conferences, or people who will presenting again when we resume in March 19th and 20th, 2022. And Toneal is one of those people, so I'm really pleased to have her here. You can find out more information about the conference on our website at chicagowrites.org and click on the conference tab. As I said, this event is going to be posted later to our YouTube channel, and we'll send you the link. And so you can watch it at your convenience whenever you want to. And you can find other cocktails and conversation events on there. And we have some really great ones. If you have any questions while we're talking, please put them in the chat, and you just go below where it says chat and then type them in. If it's something relevant to what we're discussing, I'll ask Toneal at the time. Otherwise, we'll wait till the end for question and answers. Usually I have a cocktail and I tell you what my cocktail is, but I don't have one today. I should have, but I have Bailey. Bailey's coming. Bailey always makes an appearance during Cocktails and Conversation. So, so let me introduce Toneal. You know, I was trying to remember when we met, Toneal, and I found a picture of us from 2013 at Gale Borden Library.
I remember that.
Yeah, and we were promoting our books, and we were on a panel on our publishing journey, and that was really great.
Yeah.
And so that's a long time ago now.
Yeah, I was going to say it's been at least 8 years. It may be a little more, but I remember that day just like it was yesterday. I believe Patty was on the panel as well. I think it's about 6 of us that was there, and it was a great day. Dan was there, I want to say. I do. I remember that day just like it was yesterday.
And Randy was there.
Yeah.
Yeah. And Libby Hellman Fisher was there. Yeah. So that was really fun. So, so I've been in awe of Toneal ever since then, and she's a remarkable person. She's an international award-winning author, and she writes relationship books and children's books and books on effective communication, and as well as books geared to inspire. And she's a self-published author, and so she understands the frustrations of being successful in the industry, which is really difficult. Even if you're published by the Big Five, it's still very difficult. But she knows it's possible, and she has a passion to help others, and which is so remarkable. And so she started her organization. It used to be called Authors Promoting Success, and now it's called Artists Promoting Success. And tell me why you changed the name, Toneal.
Well, you know what? It was because I was just focused on the literary arts. And so I decided to expand the brand because some of my authors, they had become other things. They were doing writing plays. So they had become playwrights and started creating film. And so now those partnerships started to delve into other aspects of the arts. So we were doing, you know, not just literary arts, but also performance and visual arts as well. And so I'm like, you know what, we're not just authors, but we're actually artists. So yeah, so in 2019, we expanded the brand to officially be known as Artists Promoting Success.
Great. It's always great to expand. And you know, the creative arts are very similar in how things happen for us. You know, it's really difficult. You have to be so tenacious. There are so many commonalities among the arts. So
absolutely.
Yeah. So tell me how you got started in your literary career.
Oh my goodness. So it's so funny. I tell people all the time, like, I'm not sure whether or not you all are believers, but this is just a true story. God is the reason why I got started. Literally, it was one night back in 2010. I was laying down and the spirit just woke me up and said, "You're going to write a book." And this is the name of it. And it was called Pleasing Your Partner, a Spiritual Guide to Happiness. And there was nothing about that book that was conventional. Nothing. Like, I knew nothing about the literary industry 11 years ago. Absolutely nothing. I wasn't even really a big reader 11 years ago, but it was just like, okay, write this book. And I wrote it. And I say now, when I look back on it, I know it was just God's favor, because I review books now and I'm like, I would have torn that book apart 11 years ago. And I have since revamped the book because I know a little better now. But yeah, so that's really how I got started. And it's so crazy to think that this is 11 years later. But yeah, that's exactly how I got started.
That's an amazing story. I'm going to take a little detour here because it seems like Anne is having trouble.
Absolutely.
She can't see the video. She
Okay.
can't see me or Toneal. I don't know why that is. Can everybody else see us?
Yes.
It depends on what device she's on. So if she's on like a phone, she may have to scroll either left or right, because when you're on a computer, you can see everybody's pictures. But if you're on the phone, you can only see like 3 other people aside from you. So she's going to have to just scroll through her pages till she gets to us.
Does that help you, Anne?
Thank you.
Okay, cool. All right. Okay, so tell me, so after you, tell me how you published this first book.
So first book, this was before I started my publishing company. This was through Author House, which I try not to say anything negative about other companies, but I just feel as though when you go with certain vanity presses, you have to be very careful. And that's why one of my main pieces of advice for people now is do your research, because at the time, I knew nothing about the literary world. And so when I called Author House, they spoke to me as though I already knew the industry. And so, like, for me, I'm one that I teach people about the industry, and I even teach them what questions you should be asking a publisher or an editor, because many times we expect for people to just be, just have integrity and talk to us and not scam us. And so when I call Author House, maybe it was just the, agent that I got, but they really were not, what's the word? They didn't walk me through the process. They spoke to me as though I'm supposed to, I never knew what a trim size was. So when they're like, well, what's the trim size of your book? I'm like, what is a trim size? And so then they started just naming just giving me all these random numbers, 5 by 8, 6 by 9, 8.5 by 11. I'm like, what does that mean? Like, literally, I was dumbfounded. And so they were like, well, 8.5 by 11 is like a workbook size. And so technically, because my book had some questions in it, I'm like, okay, well, let's go with that. But other than that, like, they didn't tell me anything about, okay, you need to add.
Sorry. I muted her.
Okay, I'm sorry. So, like, literally what Author House did was, what I called them in to say I wanted, that's what they gave me. They didn't walk me through what more I needed, what I could benefit from. And so I personally wasn't the most pleased with that experience, but I didn't necessarily know what else it should have been. So they literally took the manuscript and just put it together and added the ISBN, and boom, there you go.
Yeah, in those early days of self-publishing, it was really difficult. You had to know what you were doing. But now, there are a lot of other options out there. And so, there are so many options to publishing that it has changed a lot in those years.
Absolutely.
So once you published your book, once you had a book in your hand, what did you do then?
Well, what I was doing while they were getting it ready, I was doing more research about this whole thing called the literary industry. What does that mean? What does one do when they are an author? And so I really just started reading up about like book festivals and events and expos and all those different things, because whereas I did not know about the literary world, I did know about marketing. My bachelor's degree is in communication. So I knew a little bit about marketing. And so I know that, okay, if you are going to launch a product, you need to get exposure for it. And so for me, it was, what type of exposure do I want? And so that was really what I was researching. So whether it was just about like doing different contests, whether it was about getting book reviews, so figuring out how to get other people to read the book, or different, just what can I do to get my book out there and to like kind of create a brand. So that was really my next thought was, how do I make this thing a brand?
And how did you do that?
Well, Samantha, that's a great question. Because it's a relationship book, I really started out, and it's crazy because, so I'm an author, my husband is not an author. So whereas he supports me, he was like, I don't write, because I was all about, let's do relationship seminars. It's called Pleasing Your Partner, a spiritual guide to happiness. So let's make these relationship seminars. And whereas I could do them on my own, the fact that initially he and I were on the front cover, I'm like, it would be so great if we did these things together. And again, everywhere I went, he was there, but he's just like, this just isn't what I do. Like, I want you to shine, so you figure it out. So I went from trying to do relationship seminars to really just partnering with different churches and having them bring me into couples ministry or marriage ministries, things like that, to speak on it. So that's really how the first book was that. And then just going to all these different places. I think I probably went to 8 or 10 different cities, not just in Chicago, but I was in like Ohio and Atlanta and Texas. And I was some of everywhere that first year touring the book, because again, my whole thing was all about exposure.
Wow, that's really great. And so what was your inspiration to starting Artists Promoting Success?
So in 2013, so again, keeping in mind 2011, I've gone to all these different places and I'm steadily meeting authors. And I think that it's very important to note that I actually am an introvert. People will not believe me. So I'm just not going to say it anymore. I'll at least say ambivert, but I am not an extrovert. I am not an extrovert. And so I would go to all these different events. And when these authors would come to me and they were asking me, because the other thing to note is that my first book won a national award. Like, I was the National Black Book Festival's best new author, number 3 best new author. I had no clue, but I'm very helpful and I like to share what I know. And so when I'm going to all these different places, all of these authors will ask me, well, how did you do this? And I'm like, child, I don't even really know. Like I couldn't act like that I did something, because I don't know what I did, And I remember James Garner, real quick. James told me one day, because one of his books was award winning, right? And I remember him saying, yeah, if I knew what I did, I would have done the same thing for all the rest of them so that they all could be award winner. And I definitely echo his sentiments. But in either case, so these authors will ask me and I would tell them all of, whatever I knew. And various ones would constantly say, you should start your own organization. Like, people need to hear this information. You need to help other people, blah, blah, blah. And I tell people all the time, like, I'm actually not, like, writing is not really what I'm passionate about. What I'm passionate about is helping people. And so writing is a vehicle that I'm able to use to help people. And so that's really how the organization started. Just everybody saying, hey, you should do this. I'm like, let me see what it means to have an organization. And so 8 years later, we're still here.
Well, and then, so tell me what it was like in the beginning. What was your goal?
Oh, it was so crazy. I don't know, Samantha. So I'm being very, very transparent. That's all I know how to be. So when it first started in my head, I have since learned that I think macro. I didn't know that I thought macro is just how I thought. So it was regular to me. But I'm like, okay, so I know somebody from Chicago, from Ohio, from Baltimore, from Florida, from North Carolina, from, all these different places. So I was like, it should be like a chapter thing. Let's have art office promoting success in all these different places. Great idea, right? But the how was what was missing, right? So like I connected with all of these people. They were so excited. They're like, yeah, let's do it. But then they asked for direction. I didn't really know the answer. I didn't know what we were doing, how we were going to execute. I just knew this was something we had to do. So the reality is that I then kind of put being having chapters, I put that on hold for a minute, and the vision changed until I could actually get a vision. Like, what exactly do I want to do with this organization? People are saying help, but exactly how will I help? And one of the things that you have to know is that when you start bringing other people into your vision, one, you need to have a clear vision so that way somebody doesn't take it over. And two, like people are willing to help, but either they need direction or they're going to you need to be able to partner with them or cross promote, do something. And I just didn't know in 2013, I didn't know how to make it work at that point. I didn't have enough life experience and enough life lessons in this industry. I was still basically brand new. And so I was like, okay, well, let's not do the chapter president thing. Let's just kind of fall back. And so what I did was I just started having monthly meetings. So, and we did it just Chicago only. At this point, I didn't even have my bookstore. So I was renting out the Croc Center. Go ahead, Samantha, I'm sorry.
So what was your vision at that point?
When I changed it was just to start educating, because that's what I do. I'm a teacher I'm not a teacher by trade, but I'm a teacher by nature. That's what I do.
So
When I
educating people on how to publish their book.
It was actually not just about self-publishing. That was some of it. But every month, the vision was to just teach on different aspects of what it means to be an author. So whether we're talking about promoting, whether we're talking about branding, how to write, what editing looks like, publishing, like literally, and a lot of authors didn't understand Amazon. They didn't understand how they got paid. So what I would do is just like literally, and we still do this today. And so this is one of the things that kept every fourth Friday, it would just be whatever authors that had questions and we come together and I would have a topic in mind. This is what I'm teaching on. So like, for example, this past month for June, we just did a network meeting on promotion, understanding what you are investing and not just in terms of money, but also in terms of time.
Right. And so your goal changed dramatically, but actually not. I mean, it was always your intention to help people, right? You just didn't know exactly in what direction to go.
Exactly. I had to streamline it, right? So it was like, instead of just saying, okay, we're going to have this organization and everybody do something, I didn't really know how do I run it in Ohio if I'm not there, right? Like, so when you start a business, you have to figure out how, if the business is bigger than you, how are you going to make that work? And that was what I didn't know, because at that point, APS was just me, so it was, I was APS. I had a vision to help other people. So my goal was to get other people who either had the same belief in helping somebody else or who just wanted to learn. And so whereas at that point, I was only 2-3 years in the game, so I couldn't, really call myself a veteran author, but I knew more than the people who were just starting out. And so for me, it was about educating them with everything that I had learned thus far. So that way they wouldn't have to lose all the money that I lost. They wouldn't have to cry all the tears that I had cried because I didn't know. So it's like, I feel I'm a big believer in giving back. So once you learn, then it's your job to help somebody else.
Well, and so once you learned, then did you show them how to self-publish? Did you show them how to get traditionally published? Did you publish them? How did that work?
So at the time also, okay, so the order of events, 2013 is when APS was formed. I didn't form my publishing company until 2014. So at that point, it was really just educating them about what it meant to, if you wanted to publish your own book, what does that look like? And I tell people all the time, understand that if you're going to self-publish, yourself will not just be publishing it, but yourself will be marketing, yourself will be promoting and selling. So understand the whole thing. This is really DIY. So that's really what I was doing for 2013, was just all teaching them all the aspects about promoting and publishing, right? So when 2014 started, to this day, I don't necessarily market my publishing company because fortunately I've never had to. Like once people found out that I publish, and again, I'm a small house, but I'm not traditional. I call myself like hybrid because I'm not self-published, a self-publishing company, whereas they have to do it themselves. I do take it from them and I help them do it, but it comes at a price, right? So in 2014, I had 3 authors out the door, so that's what I did that year. So every year since 2014, I've just been working through that. Now I think that I'm transitioning more to becoming a traditional publisher, maybe say within the next 5 years. That's what I will be looking to do. And the reason why I'm saying it that way is because it takes a lot to build up a big enough Rolodex where you can promote, because that's really the sales is where a publisher makes their money, is on the back end, but the point to answering your question is I wasn't able to do everything in 2013 because I didn't start my publishing company until 2014. And then I opened up the bookstore in 2015. And then I did the gala in 2017. So every year there was just like what I call the natural progression of things. So in terms of helping them, what I helped them with at that time was just education. And that's really our mission with APS, to educate indies on the business of entrepreneurship and then to provide platforms for exposure.
Okay, and so tell us a little bit about the platforms.
Can you repeat that for me?
Tell us a little bit about the platforms. How do you teach people to create their platform?
So it depends on what you're trying to do, right? But this is the reason why I keep it as artist promoting success, because regardless of what industry you're coming from, if you are trying to launch your own business, you have to know how to market yourself. You have to know how to promote yourself and how to sell your product. And you would be surprised how many people they don't know how to sell themselves, or they're not comfortable with selling themselves. And before I became an author, I spent 15 years in the sales industry. That's what I did. I was a salesperson. And so you have to, and I teach people all the time about being comfortable with promoting or selling yourself, because if you don't believe in your brand, you can't very well expect other people to believe in your brand. And so that's really the question was, how did we do it, or what did I teach them? It's really just about, so whether you are an author, whether you're a singer, whether you are a filmmaker, you have a product that you have to push. And so a lot of times what people make the mistake of doing is they wait until they physically have their product, or until the process is over, and then they start to promote, and then they start to tell people. But one of the things I've learned is you have to, at the beginning, you have to see the end at the beginning, right? So you need to, when you know that you have a song in mind or a book you want to write, at that time, you need to start promoting it. Just because you don't know the date that is going to be released, you need to start building a buzz right now. Start getting people excited about it at the beginning of it. So that's really one of the things that I do, is just build their awareness about what they need to do.
Right. And did you just learn that by doing it?
Yes,
Like
yes.
that first book?
Look, so much, Samantha. I am 17 books in now, but so much of what I've gone through was baptism by fire. Whether you want to call it that or trial and error, because there were things, again, there were things I knew to do, but depending on the point, it took me a minute to grow a base. And I won't even say I have a huge fan base, but I do have a lot of supporters. I'll say that. But it took a while to grow that. So what it looks like now, if I drop a book versus what it looked like then is a little bit different. And then now I spend more time publishing other people, or we produce anthologies. So I'm more so doing that or recruiting for that than I am releasing my own books. So it's a little bit different. Like I still wear the author hat, but not as often. I'm more in publisher or anthologist mode.
Mhm, mhm. Which do you like better?
Oh, honestly, I think I like the anthologist mode better because here are the differences. When I write my own stuff, obviously I love to teach, so I'm virtually self-help. I've written across genres, but primarily self-help. So I do like to write, but sometimes writing can be stressful, because you're trying to figure out what comes next and how to do it. As a publisher, it's a little bit difficult because um, you you love the fact that you're helping people to realize their dreams. However, it is very stressful, just the process itself, because all writers are not created equal. I'll just say it that way. So trying to get through people's manuscripts it's not always the easiest thing. But as an anthologist is so different because you're bringing people together and you're producing some more than just a book, right? So even though the finished product, you are dealing with people and you're helping them to build within themselves. So I like the anthologist hat better.
It's interesting because when we're writing our own work, um, or I should back up. When I'm an editor, you're probably doing editing also.
Mhm.
And it's so much easier to edit someone else's work than it is to edit your own.
Agreed.
I mean, because you have a subjectivity you don't have with your own work. Most of your own work is in your head. It may not be
Mhm.
on the page, but we don't see that.
Right.
So, it's much easier to edit somebody else. And that's why
Absolutely.
all authors need editors,
Yes.
no matter
Yes.
what they're doing, right?
Yep. Absolutely.
So tell us about those kinds of mechanics of your business, the editing, the design, the layout.
Gotcha. So like in editing, like you say, I have so many videos where I say us like every editor needs an editor, right? Because at the end of the day, we read, and this is for people across the board, you don't see what's on that paper. You read what you think you wrote, not what you actually wrote, right? And so a lot of times authors, they look at editing as being an option when it's really not an option. If you are going to publish, you want, and the reason, so let me stop because I'm not sure where everybody is in their process here, but the reason why editing is not an option is because you don't know that you're not a good writer. You think that you have great ideas. And sometimes you have some people that because they were a good speller in grammar school, they think that that translates over. And it's not always the case. A lot of times we write the way we speak. That's not always a good thing. Some of us, depending on the platform, if we're a technical writer, and if you write how you talk, that's not good. So, but what happens is, especially with self-published authors, they think of it as, okay, well, this means this is free. This process should be free or at the very least cheap. And what they find out is that when I go to get an editor, oh my goodness, wait a minute. So you mean to tell me I got to pay $500, $1,000, $5,000 for this book? I thought I was self-publishing. you are. You see what I'm saying? And so a lot of time, and this is one of the things I teach authors, is to, number one, have a book budget. When you come out of the gate, understand all the costs that are associated with what you're about to do. So you need an editor, you need a book designer, graphic designer, whatever you want to call it, because what you don't want to do is say, oh, well, Lulu, or it was Create Space, but now KDP, they provide for us this platform. So I'll just, you don't want to do that because you have 1,000, well, that's being nice, thousands of other people walking around with the exact same book cover. So whereas it may have been free, you get what you pay for, And so I just tell people that there are so many different aspects. So for me, I typically don't design the covers. I work with different people to design the covers. When it's somebody else's product or project, I do the editing for the most part. But like you said, for me, I enjoy editing because it can be subjective and you can help people to build. I'm really a developmental editor, if you want to call it structural editor. So that way you see their vision. And so that's really what I do, is help them to bring that vision to life.
Right. And it doesn't matter if you're self-publishing, if you're indie publishing, if you're hybrid publishing, or you're trying to go the traditional route. You need to edit your book before you send it anywhere.
Yes, ma'am.
And then even if it's edited to the nth degree, when it gets to that publisher, they're going to edit it some more.
Again, absolutely.
So, you have to start out. I think that's the main thing that people don't understand is you can publish whatever you want. You can do it for free if you want to. You can create your own design. You can upload your own layout. You can do it all for free. But if you're publishing a book that's not quality, what does it matter? Unless you just want it for your family.
Yep.
And that's
Yep.
fine. And sometimes that's the goal. And so everybody has a different goal. But the thing is, no matter what you put out into the world, don't you want it to be the best it can be?
Absolutely. And I think a lot of times we have to understand that the world is bigger than us, right? A lot of times we feel like that the world is only the people that we grew up with, or the people that live on our block, or the people that we have this experience with. But you never know, especially if you're using a platform like a KDP that's going to link to Amazon. Literally, people from anywhere in the world has access to your book. So you want to make sure that it is something that you're proud of. And that's why that's something else that I teach is know your why. Like, why are you getting involved? And make sure that your expectation, or your expectation and your execution plan, they should match, right? So like if it's just, okay, I only want to do this because I want to prove to myself that I could. Okay, if that's all you want, then I'm not expecting that you're going to go out selling this because you didn't say you want to be a bestseller. But if you say you want to be a bestseller, then what you put in, the effort that you put in as a bestseller, that should be different than if I just want my kids to see that I could do it. If you're saying that I'm doing this because I want to become a full-time entrepreneur, that effort gonna look a little bit different. And a lot of times I think what happens is, because publishing a book is becoming so much more common, then people don't understand that it's still hard. If you want to do it right, you still have to put in the work. You still have to pay your dues. You still have to walk before you can. Like, this is not a get rich quick scheme. You know what I'm saying? It's not. I don't care if you publish. Some people have found, okay, well, I can do 2 for 10. Okay, and that's great for now, but what happens if your book is trash? Like you just said, you can do it, but why?
Yeah. And, as we both said, people have their vision and they have their goal. And if it's just to write a memoir for their kids, that's one thing. But, if you're putting it out into the world, into the general population, you need to make it the best that it can be.
Absolutely.
So what kind of authors do you help?
Oh, wow. So in 7 years, I think I have published 20 or 21 authors. So I typically have done all females, and that is not by design. It just happens to be that way. I was so happy because I actually signed my first male author. He's 11. So he's going to be dropping his book called The Dream Train in October of this year. But you know what? Anybody who is willing to do the work, because I used to just say anybody that has a story to tell. Let me tell you something. I'm sorry, I don't mean to say it like that, but I have hit some disasters by working with just anybody who think they have a story to tell, because every storyteller isn't a writer and every writer isn't a storyteller. Those are two different arts. And so that's something that experience taught me. I'll say it that way. And so, because again, when we're talking about these manuscripts, some of them are real hard, real hard to get through because people don't know how to write. And it's so amazing that when it comes to writing, no one feels they don't understand the need for a coach, right? Like almost any other industry, if you play basketball, even if you're drafted to the NBA, so this is a professional level, they still have coaches. Why? Because you might be a professional, but you still don't know how to do it all. But you have people who've never written before, never published before. They have no clue about the literary industry, but they're offended if you suggest, you know what, let me coach you first. Because again, that whole concept of spending money, that's when you lose people.
Right, right. Yeah. Yeah. So obviously you don't accept everyone who sends you a proposal.
Mhm.
So what do you do with the ones you're not pleased with?
Well, a lot of times I'll just tell them, what are you trying to do? So obviously the first thing that I do is I will offer coaching services to see if we can help to make this work, right? So I have one client, and I will allow that client to remain anonymous, but that client said they had a book. So I said, well, let's do this. Why don't you sign me on as your coach and we'll work hand in hand to get this going. So, and when I say that, I don't mean as a ghostwriter, because that's a whole nother matter. But what would happen is we would have monthly calls. And first it was, let's figure out what you want to write about. Because I think the other thing that people have to understand, especially you talked about memoirs earlier, especially if you're doing a memoir, understand that this is not like 20, 30 years before the internet where there were certain topics that were still taboo. Like, unfortunately, it's not a shocker to hear about incest anymore, to hear about rape anymore. Like those things used to be shockers, but now it's not. So when you're writing a book, you have to figure out not just something that's relatable, but something that's really going to capture your audience. Because just telling them everything about how every day you get up and you go to work, that I get up and I go to work. What makes your story so what we did was we would meet, well, not meet, but do it like this monthly. And we kind of structure out her book. So first, here's the outline. Now let's figure out what we're going to write. Now let's put it in a particular order. And so like every week, or not every week, every month, I would give her homework. So I want you to write chapter 1. She send it to me. Then I send it back to her once I've edited, answer these questions, because this isn't right. So you see what I'm saying? Like when you have a coach that's actually, we can guide you through the process, because sometimes when you're writing, you think what you've written is good. And it's not necessarily that it's not good, but it just may not be complete. You're not thinking, all the way in the different angles that a reader is. You're just thinking about what you feel is interesting to tell, but you have to think about it from a reader's purview and what they think would be interesting to read.
Absolutely. And also about the elements of good storytelling.
Mm-hmm.
And they all have to be there, and people don't know what they are. Some
Mhm.
people know it intrinsically, you know, they
Mhm.
know how to tell a story and they can write it. But most people, and many of us who are experienced writers, you know, we lose sight of that as we're telling the story. We lose
Mhm.
sight of the inciting incident or the conflict that isn't there or the tension that's, you know, so coaching at any level, and that can be editing as well.
Mhm.
But
Mhm.
so how long did this person last doing this?
Well, it took about 8 months, I think, to get through the entire process. I want to ask you this, and I know you're the interview, but this came to my mind. What is your stance when you see the write a book in 2 weeks, or write a book this weekend, or write a book in 30 days? What is your stance on that?
That's not going to happen. You know, even the NaNoWriMo, what is that, 30,
Mhm. NaNoWriMo, yeah.
that's 30 days, is it?
Mhm.
Well, you know, you could have a book. It's not going to be a good book, but you could have 50,000 words. I'm not sure what their word count is, but you know, nobody's going to write a book in a weekend. Nobody's going to write a book in a week. If you can write a book in a month, you know, that's better than I can do. It took me 8 years for my first book.
That part.
And
That
I've
part.
taken I've got 2 books I'm working on, and those are both going on 6 or 7 years. So,
Mhm.
you know, if you want it to be good, if you want it, if you don't care, you can do NaNoWriMo and write it in 30 days, but it's not going to be a good book.
And see that, honestly, Samantha, that is one of my pet peeves. It's one of my biggest pet peeves. And what has happened is, because so many people have a desire to write, so now it's become a market thing, right? So if you're on Facebook, you see all of these different sponsor ads: write a book in 30 days, write a book in 3 weeks, write a book this weekend. And what I tell people all the time is, you may write an outline for a book in 30 days. You might get through a chapter in 30 days, but life is too real to be able to say that I'm going to write an entire book. You might can put together a journal in 30 days, but if you're doing a book, like, content, because here's the thing, it's not just a technique, right? When you're writing it, sometimes, especially depending on what the content is, you get really involved and it gets too emotional, and you have to detach. Even if it's a fiction work, you know, like, you may not be able to just sit there and write it out, especially for people who are writing memoirs or autobiographies. When you're sitting down and you're recounting things that have happened to you, like, what is a natural thing that can happen is a trigger can occur. You can't just sit down and write, oh, I was raped, and you just writing it like it's not. So it's natural to have to step away, and you may have to step away for a few days, maybe even a few weeks,
Or a few months.
before you can return. And so, you know, I just said that was just a question I wanted to ask you. I see that and I cringe.
And you know what? I think even those people, the people who do those contests or those events, they know it's not going to be a good book. But
Mhm, mhm,
you know, if you have 50,000 words that you've written, that's a great beginning.
mhm.
That's a great jumping off point. And then from there, you start revising and thinking about it and seeing if you have all the story elements and seeing if
Mhm.
you have the, you know, the arc. And then you can revise it into something usable.
Yeah.
But that first thing is not.
It doesn't work. And even if you're not a novelist, right? Because again, I'm not sure everybody's writing level here.
Right.
Everybody isn't a novelist, but still, just to be, because I like to just give people realistic expectations. It is not realistic to think, even if you're just writing a quick self-help book, the top 10 tips to do whatever, like you still have to do your research. You still have to, you know what I'm saying? Like there are different things that go into putting this book together. So to feel that you can do an entire, and then after you write it, like we've been talking about, you have to send it to an editor. One of the things I tell authors all the time, do not get married to your first draft. It's called first for a reason, because there will be others who follow. And a lot of times, you know, when a writer writes, because artists, we are very sensitive with our, you know, stuff. And so like, we don't want for somebody to tell us this isn't good, or you need to fix this, or but it's a process. And that's what I'll just end it there, and to say that remember that writing is a process.
It is. And also, you need to remember that you need to have a thick skin if you're going to be a writer.
Yes, ma'am.
And you need to listen to people. You know, you give your work to 3 different people, they're all going to have a different opinion.
Yep.
So, and it's very subjective. But so you read their comments, you listen to what they're saying, you take in their suggestions, and then you decide what works for you. But you have to have a thick skin. You just, and you can disregard anything you disagree with, but you have to listen. If you have people you trust or editing your work or commenting on your work, you have to listen to them.
And I will say this, because I know I'm not trying to beat this subject, but I need them to understand, get quality people that you're listening to. Like your girlfriend that you grew up with does not constitute, like, unless she is an English teacher, professor, or something in that realm, just because it's people that you know, that does not constitute as a qualified or a good opinion, you know. And then know whose voice, I say it this way, know whose voice that you want to give volume to. Right? Everybody should not have an equal voice when because as you just said, writing is a very subjective art form. And so you can show it to you, you can show it to me, and say, Randy, me and Randy might look at it differently because it's a male-female dynamic. You and I may look at it different because our races are different. You see what I'm saying? But it doesn't, everybody could have a point, but again, you have to know your why. What message are you trying to get to come across? And once you understand who your team is or your person is, then stick with that person and understand that everybody may not even agree with that person. But if that person gets your vision, then now you guys are a team.
Right, right, absolutely. So tell us about your gala.
Yes. Oh, so I love, so this is my favorite time of the year next to Christmas, but this is our 5th annual awards gala. So what happens is from January to April, I run a contest specifically for self-published authors, right? And so the winners of that contest, along with some of the select members from my organization, they are honored that night. And so the first year we did it, we had about 200 people to show up. And that was really a big deal for me because this isn't mainstream literary. Even the talent that we have, these are, again, independent artists. So there are no big labels behind this. It's not a huge promotional thing. I didn't even do a press release. You know what I'm saying? Like, this was literally word of mouth. And so this is year 5. I call it our grace year, but this is year 5. And because of Corona, we had to cancel the one last year. So this year we are honoring the winners of 2020 and 2021. We are going to be in Country Club Hills at the Atrium on Thursday, August 26th. And so people can get their tickets, but this year we're going to do a 3-day event. The one day on Thursday will be in person. That's going to be from 6:30 to 9 p.m. And tickets are $35 for that. You can get them via Eventbrite or my website, weareaps.com. It's even on Facebook. Those tickets will be that price until July 9th. So this is still early bird. But then we also have 2 virtual events on Friday and Saturday. The first one is called The Business of Music. And so that's going to be a Zoom room, much like this one. And then we're going to leave the Zoom room and go to Facebook and have a panel discussion. And then on Saturday is going to conclude with The Right, WRITE, The Right Life. So I'll be instructing the instructor for that one. And then again, we're going to go to Facebook to do a panel. And so it's different ways of writing. So not just writing a book, but again, all writing is not created equal. So even if you find that being an author isn't good for you or the right fit, understand that you may want to write for magazines. There's money to be made in freelance writing, or being a playwright, or writing for the silver screen, or writing for the big screen. So we're going to have panelists that's going to hit all of those areas within that event.
And then what happens Thursday night?
So Thursday is the actual award ceremony. So when we come out, we'll be at the atrium and we'll just be honoring those individuals. So from 6:30 to 7, it's just going to be some networking. I always have like a dessert bar, but like, so you'll be networking and just mingling from 6:30 to 7. And then the actual ceremony, the program starts from 7 to 9. So all of those who won or who were recognized, we have like APS MVPs. I do a book review of the year recipient, because like I haven't read as much this year, but in those years, I was reading a book a week. And so I would do a review. So whoever got the most views, they won. So it's almost like a people's choice type of a thing. And so we have the book review of the year recipients. We have the APS MVP. I honor those authors that I published that year through my publishing company. And then you just have those different categories. So fiction, nonfiction, inspirational. One year we did the best anthology. And then this year we did like the best children's book. So it just really depends on the mixture of submissions that we get. But this is our annual event. And like I said, this is our 5th year. So I am so excited. So we will have red carpets. Bill will be there from with Bill and Carrie. I'm trying to remember I think it's WCGO. Yes. So Bill Turk will be there. He'll be doing my red carpet along with Dorian Nash. And then of course we have, photographers. So it's really just a great night. And we'll be in our after 5, where it's just really a great event. It's always a great event.
Sounds like fun.
Yep.
Can you type the link to it in the chat?
Absolutely. Absolutely. What I will do is put in my website, because if people go to my website, they can get the tickets for all 3 days. So right now, if you do, okay, so to Jan, the contest is from January to April. So you can enter next year starting January 1st. But if you want to come out now, again, you can either get your tickets just for the gala through Eventbrite or Facebook. But if you want to get tickets for all 3 days, it's only $75. And that's by going to the website, weareaps.com. My website is the only site that you can get all 3 tickets.
And on your website, are there contest rules and things like that?
It is when we are accepting. So when we're open for submission, I don't do anything erotic or anything exceptionally graphic or profane. So as long as it's not that, you're good. So whether it's sci-fi, paranormal, like I've had to basically make a lot of people were not able to get in, because you have this thing street lit, and street lit typically is not going to go with APS. So whereas no, we're not a Christian book contest, I don't do anything excessively vulgar, profane, or erotic.
And these are for self-published books?
Yes, this is self-published authors. APS have published, I'm sorry, because I'm looking in the chat, Samantha. So if you do not count my books, I want to say we have published about, let me see, 17. I think it's like 36 to 40 something books in 7 years. It might be closer to 50. I would have to go back and check, but we've published a few different authors. A couple of our authors are not from Chicago, which is great. But yeah, so in general, I publish between 3 to 6 authors a year. So we're still a small house, but I do 3 to 6 authors a year, because in addition to that, we have the organization and the Writer Society and right. But yes, so they can go to my website when the contest is open. Contest rules are there. So they will be able to see that, and they can go to the website also to get their tickets.
Okay, great. Well, this has just been a treat.
Absolutely. And thank you so much for having me on. And I am so sorry again for my tardiness, but I'm glad we were able to make it happen.
It always works out.
Yes, absolutely.
And I want to thank everybody else for their patience while we worked out our little difficulties, but all's well that ends well.
Absolutely.
You can see Toneal at the conference in March, and I hope I'll see you all there. It's going to be a great time, and I'm looking so forward to seeing everyone in person. And
absolutely.
Beautiful Warwick Allerton Hotel. So check it out on Chicago Writers Association website. And thanks again to Neil, and I'll see everyone next month.
Awesome. Thank you. And thank you to everybody that tuned in. If you guys are not already connected with me, please connect with me on Facebook. I am just my name. So nothing special, just Toneal Jackson, what you see in the box. Or if you are on any of the other platforms, Instagram, Clubhouse, any of Twitter, I am at APS, the letter N International. And matter of fact, I'll just type it here in the box so that way you guys can see it. But you can follow me there, APS International.
Okay, great.
Yep.
All right. Thanks again, everyone. Nice to
Thank you guys.
See you
Have a
soon.
wonderful Sunday.
Good night.
Bye, everybody.
Bye-bye.